Everybody?
Okay. Do the thing.
Okay. All right, work sessions are an opportunity for board members to discuss issues informally with staff and invited guests. The board encourages members of the public to attend work sessions and listen to the discussion, but there's generally no opportunity for public comment. Members of the public wishing to address the board are welcome to do so during the board's regularly scheduled meetings held twice monthly. So we have 3 items on the agenda. We have first the agenda review, second ethics training, and then we have an update on the Sunset Empire Transportation District. So I'll turn it over to our county manager.
Thanks, Chuck, members of the board. Just real quick, I sent an email out a couple weeks ago expressing my desire to spend just a couple minutes on the revolving agenda at the work sessions. Part of this is to help staff plan out future agendas. So if there's topics that the board want us to be discussing, if you have a topic you would like to discuss with the other board members, we can put it on the calendar and just for awareness sake. Just to go over real quick, next week we have a daytime work session. Right now there's just two items. We'll have a legislative update that will likely take more than the 10 minutes that's on the calendar. And then we have an ARPA funding concept update. But those are the only two items, so it could be a shorter work session next week. On the 13th, again, we have an agenda review. So this is the one before the evening meeting. We have an agenda review, and then we have a legislative session wrap up. The legislative session will end on the 10th. So on the 13th, we'll be able to just summarize everything that occurred and also get a little intel on what the lobbyists think are going to come through the 2025 session. So that'll take a little bit more time. But right now on March 20th, what I'm going to be suggesting is that we go ahead and cancel that work session. It's a daytime work session on the 20th. We don't have anything on it right now. And it's not a bad time to take a day off. So not literally, but figurative. And so then as you look out right now, there's not a lot on the calendar. Usually this calendar is full. It's the nature of the time of year. We're in budget process right now. Things are coming closer to the end of the fiscal year. So things are slowing down on that end a little bit. So if there's any topics that your board wants to talk about, just let me and Chuck Whitlam know. We'll put it on the calendar. I know that there's going to be a desire to still talk about the HCP as we learn more about what may or may not happen. We'll be budgeting time to talk about our financials and the budget process. So those things will be consuming some of the spring time, but we just want to make sure the board knows and has the opportunity to add things if you desire. So that's all I have, Chuck.
Thank you, County Manager. Just for clarity, this has been available to us. We've had this document, this working document available every week. We've been able to reference it and know what's coming up. So there haven't been any surprises.
Yeah.
We just want to have an opportunity at each work session to go over it, have some discussion. And one thing I kind of resolved to do is to make sure that we're fostering good communication amongst the board. So this will be kind of the time to do that. Can look out into the future and see if there are items that we want to devote more time to, but that's just the purpose behind this. So thank you, County Manager. Really appreciate the update. Commissioner Toyoka.
One question on so legislative update. I know that when we get those, like if I call and say a question on A, B, or C, you ensure that we get it addressed. I was just kind of thinking about that. It seems pretty haphazard. We have a normal like, if I want to have questions about these items, I submit them to you, and you can distribute it to the board. Say, would you like to discuss these items further with you, or have these updated on legislative update, or just keep it offside? Some of those topics may or may not be a concern to everyone.
Right.
So maybe we can make, instead of just being random and just calling you, maybe we can just formally say, hey, I'm going to email any other further questions I have on that update. Plus, it gives them more time to address our questions.
Absolutely. As you know, staff are keeping a kind of a legislative spreadsheet on all the bills that are of a county interest. As your board has some, if you let us know, we can share that with the other board members. see what the interest is, and then make sure that our lobbyists are also tracking those bills and then providing updates if it is something that board wants to be hearing about. And if not, we can provide one-on-one updates too. So,
Perfect, yeah.
yeah. So yeah, if there are, March 10th is going to be on us before you know it. So
And Commissioner Thompson, you have a question?
I do. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Well, I
Oh, you're
appreciate,
muted. Can't hear you.
my computer says I'm
Well,
on,
we're muted, but we don't have any audio in the room here.
my computer says I'm unmuted. Must be on
We're
your
taking a
side.
look at it, Commissioner Thompson, we can't hear you.
Okay.
I can hear you, Commissioner Thompson. I'm on the phone.
So other people on the phone can hear me.
And I can hear you too, and I'm on the internet.
Okay, so the
See
internet.
that Commissioner
can hear me,
Powers
but-
has joined us as well.
Well, let's
Oh.
see.
So we can hear you now.
Okay, good. Because the internet was hearing me. That's good, but I'd rather have everybody. Thank you, Mr. Chair, and
It's
thanks.
just
for
a
the
little
call.
soft here. We're gonna turn the volume up on you.
Okay, turn the volume up. Okay. It's too late for this short session, but in previous sessions, other counties have had their, and still have their state senator and their state representative meet with them and speak to them. There are those kinds of interactions that help communicate effectively the position of Clatsop County on various issues with our local legislators. And I'd like to see us include that. Number one, I keep looking for a way to weave in what I do at AOC with what we're doing at Clatsop County. It's really complicated, and I don't know that we've succeeded at it, but I think that's another dimension, that we have the benefit of participating in that statewide organization that can add impact to our wishes. So as we design a legislative process going forward, I think we can do some system improvements that will benefit us all. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Thompson. Appreciate those suggestions. I do want to reiterate, if there's any commissioner that has a topic that they want to add to the agenda, to reach out to Don or myself. And certainly we want to accommodate those requests. Any other comments, questions at this time? Okay, we'll move on to the ethics training on page, I need glasses, page 1. County Council.
Thank you, Chair Coelho. Good evening, members of the board. Welcome to the Fair Board and Planning Commission who's joining us today. My name is Anthony Pope. I'm County Council. Today I'm going to be doing a training on Oregon Public Official Ethics. And we're going to be kind of moving through things pretty quick. I sent out the slides. I hope everybody got them, was able to review them. But by all means, if you have any questions, let me know. We can stop and discuss things. I think, Teresa, I guess if anybody online raises their hand, can you let me know? So back when I was in law school, I had a professor, and he had this thing that when he was teaching, if he came to something important, he would repeat it 3 times. So he'd be going through his lecture, he'd come to something like a contract must have consideration, and then he'd say it 3 times, a contract must have consideration, a contract must have consideration. And it used to drive me nuts, found it really annoying. But then one time he just, he talked to the class why he did that. And he had looked at a lot of studies that showed that if you hear things 3 times, it gets imprinted into your long-term memory. I'm not so sure if it works doing it 3 times in a row. I think it has to be spread out. But what I did learn pretty quickly is when he did repeat something 3 times, it was something of importance to him and something probably to write down. And that was probably going to be on the final. And that's kind of how it ended up being. And to me, it's kind of reminded me of ethics training. I know it's not the most exciting thing. It's something that we do quite often. I know the board has been through an ethics training by me, a lot of the county employees. And it's kind of the same theory. It might be a little bit annoying, but it's very important. And that's, by design, we do this often. to me, the ethics is, you know, the foundation of how the county runs. And when we have unethical behavior, even if it's just by a few individuals, it really can send turbulence throughout the whole county and cause a lot of damage. It can erode the public trust and just, you know, make things much more difficult. So I just wanted to reiterate how important it is what we're going through, even though it's not the most exciting topic. I'd also like to point out that, oh, we already got there. That what we're covering tonight is a very small part of really of the whole ethics picture. This is a slide I borrowed from Don. I think it's important to note that down here we have personal ethics. This is what, you know, we bring to the county from our own personal life experiences. I know I learned a lot of things from my family unit. It's also from our communities and cultures that we grew up with. I grew up outside of Cottage Grove in what I call a rural Oregon community. So there's certain values that we have that maybe people from other places might not have. We gain it from our religions that we practice, our educations that we receive, and even, you know, in our careers. So this is kind of the baseline of what we bring to the county. Over here in the green side, we have doing good ethics. And this is kind of basically doing the right thing while we're fulfilling our roles at the county. These are some things that, you know, Dawn pointed out that comes with everybody acting ethical, that we preserve structures and boundaries of authority. It promotes and preserves public values such as due process, right of privacy, open government. It's efficient and effective public service delivery. So this is kind of the benefits we get when we act ethical. Today, we're going to be talking mostly about the things on this other side, the doing wrong ethicals. This is what I call codified ethics. It's against the law if we break them. So the questions that we're asking tonight are more, is this legal or illegal? The other side of the ethics things is more along the lines of, is this a good thing to do or not? Oops, too far. So as far as statutory ethics, the legislature has declared that service as a public official is a public trust, and that as one safeguard for that trust, the people require all public officials to comply with the applicable provisions of this chapter. So the legislature is saying that all public officials have to follow the rules. It's important to point out who a public official is. A public official is any person who is serving the state of Oregon or any of its political subdivisions or any other public body as an elected official, appointed official, employee, agent, or otherwise, irrespective of whether the person is compensated for the services. And one thing I want to point out that's important for the boards and the commission is that last part about it doesn't matter if you're being compensated or not. Of course, the board is elected and is a volunteer board. You receive a stipend, but you're not being paid the fair board, and the commission, the planning commission, they don't get compensated at all for their service. But that doesn't relieve you of the duty of following these ethical rules. So these are the topics we're going to cover real quick tonight. We're going to go conflicts of interest, issues with personal gain, the receiving of gifts, and then public meeting laws is a little kind of outside of the normal ethical statutes, but I think it's an important thing as far as public trust and, you know, overall ethical for us to make sure we follow those rules. So we're going to talk about that a little bit. Anybody have any questions or anything yet? So we'll move on to conflicts of interest. Participation in any, so this is the definition of conflict of interest, participation in an official action that would or could result in a financial benefit to the public official, a relative, or a business in which either are associated. So this is, you know, one thing I'd like to point out is that obviously it deals with decisions you make concerning you, but it's also your family members. The statute, if we get this to work. Oh. There we go. It really narrowly defines who a family member is. So you have the public official, their spouse, their parents, step-parents, child siblings, step-siblings. The other two is that somebody that you provide a legal support obligation, such as a foster child, or an individual that either you provide benefits for or receive benefits. It's also important to know that for the spouse, your spouse's parents, step-parents, siblings also are considered a relative for this statute. So if your brother-in-law owns a business, that's something you have to be careful for when you're voting on things. I just also wanted to point out, they use the word business, but they really mean any organization that you benefit from financially. So it could be a business like an LLC or a corporation, but it also could be a nonprofit or not-for-profit. If you work for them and receive a paycheck, or even if you're on the board and you receive a stipend, that's going to be considered a business under the statutes. If you serve on the board and you don't receive any compensation and no payment, and then it's not considered a business. And so if you're ever voting on something on a board that you serve on for the organization, and you're not being compensated, that's not a conflict of interest. And it's kind of confusing. Any questions or? Oh,
I'll bring it up. There was concern, not from myself, but from others regarding my representation on FTLAC as being a potential conflict of interest because of my spouse being a employed in the forest industry. So would you talk through that?
so yeah, and just, can you just explain what the FTL,
It's the council, the Forest Trust Land Council, basically. So
and is it a government agency or is it a nonprofit?
no, I'm the representative of our board on that end.
Right, and so if you were making decisions directly for the Oregon Department of Forestry, that would be a different story because you would be making, but you're just an advisory board. There's nothing that your board could do that could really affect the Department of Forestry unless they vote on it themselves or move forward with something. They might take your advice, but that's, and we're gonna talk about it in just a minute too. There's a exception for what they call a class. So basically, if the decision affects a big enough group of people, even though you might have a family member in that group, it's going to be an exception to the rule. We'll talk about that a little bit more, but just to be
abundantly clear, I've been making recommendations fully against the Department of Forestry, so.
and just a simple answer, no, there is no conflict there.
Excellent, thank you.
Yeah.
For that clarification.
So if there is a time that you find yourself, oh, sorry, got ahead of myself. There's two types of conflicts that you might run into. The first one's a potential conflict. And this is when your action that you're taking may affect you financially. It's kind of a broader, situation. When the other one is an actual conflict, and this is if the action they take is definitely going to cause you financial gain. And there's two different each situation has a way to get kind of out of trouble. If you ever find yourself in a potential conflict or an actual conflict, you just have to declare it publicly. And with a potential conflict, you can still move forward with the deliberations. You can still vote on the issue. That's fine. If it's an actual conflict, you should withdraw yourself and recuse from the vote and also the discussion. And it's kind of technical. So if you ever have any concern that you might have a conflict, one or the other, please contact me. We can talk it through just to make sure that it's not a potential or an actual, and that we take the necessary steps. And I know that was kind of confusing how I was talking there. Does anybody have any questions, or does that make sense? Anything from the fair board back there? No? Okay. So this is what I was just talking about, the class exception. The class exception in ORS 244.02013B means that if the public official is part of an identifiable group or class, the official does not have a conflict of interest if the decision, recommendation, or action being considered or taken would affect the public official or their relatives or any business with which they or their relatives are associated to the same degree as all members of the class to which they belong. And a class can be very large. For Clatsop County, it could be the entire county. It could be certain groups, business owners, restaurant owners. And as long as there's a big enough class of people that are being affected and not just you as an individual, your family member, and then it's not going to be a conflict. And once again, this is pretty technical. There's lots of exclusions. And so if you want to talk about this, definitely, come talk to me. And the last thing I just wanted to bring up is the State Ethics Board Safe Harbor Advisory Opinion. If we ever have a discussion about a possible ethical situation and we're not sure, we have the right to petition the board for a determination. It does take about 60 days, so this isn't something you could, bring up on the day of a meeting. But basically, we'll send the situation into them. They'll give us an advisory opinion. And at that point, you're safe from any penalties or any wrongdoing. Even if later they determine that it was unethical, we have that safe harbor. So definitely a kind of a get out of jail free card. So something, we have something that's complicated we'd want to look into. So we have a fact pattern here, a kind of a quick quiz. The Clatsop County Planning Commission is considering recommending a change to the Clatsop County Land and Water Development Code that would allow for better development opportunities on certain types of residential lots. This would make these types of lots more valuable. A member of the Planning Commission owns several of these types of lots. Would he have a conflict of interest if he was going to vote on this? Nobody has to participate, but does anybody have any thoughts? He's definitely one of the people that would be considered a conflict as he is the individual. There is
How
some
many
fun-
residential, how many are we talking about?
That's actually the correct answer. I was going to talk about that later. Let's say this is the complete county and there's hundreds or even 1,000 of these type of lots.
Then I would say, no, the class would be.
That's exactly right. But what if there was only maybe 5 of these lots in the county? He owned 2 of them. Would that change anything?
Potentially.
Yeah, I think it would. And it also could be by location, if like only lots that were, around the airport or something very specific where there's a small number. So that's a great question because I was gonna bring that up. So good work. Oh. There it is. That's the answer. You are. All right, here's the second one. And this one's also a bit tricky. And this is actually a true story from the last county I worked in. The county is looking to purchase a large block of land for a county purpose. The owner of the land is a longtime friend of one of the county commissioners and stands to make a lot of money from the sale. The county commissioner that is a friend has been a strong advocate for the purchase, but has not disclosed or announced in a public meeting their friendships. And when I say close friends, I mean very close friends. They grew up together. They were college roommates. They're now neighbors. They go on vacations together. They spend holidays together.
But they're not relatives.
They're not relatives, and that's the key point. Thank you, Commissioner Coyle, you're on it here.
It's still a dirty pool.
Dirty pool, yeah, and that's why we have the next question, is should the commissioner disclose it?
Yes.
And that's exactly right. So we're kind of moving, brought this slide back up. It's not illegal, but it's definitely not an ethical thing to do. All right, we're gonna move on to personal and financial gain. Is there any other questions anybody has about conflicts of interest? I think you guys got that one down pretty good. Fair Board or Planning Commission, I think some people are
I
online.
think we got one online.
Okay.
Commissioner.
We'll keep moving on then. The public officials are prohibited from using or attempting to use their office position, official position or office to obtain financial gain or avoid a financial determinant for themselves or relatives. So we have that same class of family members. And I want to point out that it doesn't matter how minimal that financial gain or determinant is. This is something I talk a lot more in depth with county employees because they interact with county property and equipment and stuff a lot more. That's kind of where people really get into trouble with this financial gain. So there's kind of a rule though that you can just kind of think of in your head. If the gain or avoidance of a determinant, I can't say that word tonight, detriment would not otherwise be available, but for the public officials holding up his or her office or position. So we kind of look at it, if I wasn't a commissioner, a member of the Fair Board, Planning Commission, or an employee, would this opportunity be available to me? And it's kind of just some places to be on the lookout. It's when you're voting at a public meeting, and actually the conflict of interest, and this can kind of play into together, because you would be receiving a financial gain. And just in case you're thinking of being sneaky, if you declare a conflict of interest, it doesn't alleviate your duties under the personal gain rule, so you can't kind of game the system that way. So when you're making a vote, approving a contract or something like that, even making a recommendation, and once again, this is more something that I think employees have to worry about, but during the procurement process, you can't kind of come in and say, hey, by the way, my brother owns the landscaping business and give us a good deal. We can't be involved in the process at all. And the same thing, if you're ever spending county funds, and once again, if you're using county resources, you just have to be really careful. And as board members and commission members, you don't really have a lot of opportunities there. So that's still something to be kind of concerned about. We have another quiz here. County employee is looking to host a wedding for their daughter at the fairgrounds. The building they plan on using normally has a day use fee of $500. Since they are a county employee, they or a coworker waives the day use fee. I think it's a pretty easy one, but yeah. Yep, it is an ethic violation, but kind of just want to point out a different fact pattern. Let's say this was a county park that had a place that you could reserve for free. If a county employee went and used it, it's not going to be the same, even though it's a county property. It's not going to be a gain because the but-for thing, a normal member of the public could always reserve the same thing for free. So there's no issues there. And there's a couple of exceptions, what's not considered financial gain. Of course, your official compensation package, as the board, you receive a stipend, that's obviously okay, or any allowances. I know sometimes the fair board, or even almost the planning commission really goes on trips, so you might go on a trip and get reimbursed for your mileage in your hotel room. That's, of course, okay. Any unsolicited awards for professional achievement. So if you win Commissioner of the Year and they fly you back to Florida for a banquet, that's fine. Still, I'd recommend coming and talk to me if you do have anything like that happen. And then we're going to talk about a little bit more certain gifts. So it's a pretty simple rule of gifts. If the source of a gift to a public official has legislative or administrative interest in the decisions or vote of the public official can only accept gifts from that source, which are aggregate value of gifts from the source. Oh, sorry, I really messed that up. Can only accept gifts from the source when the aggregate value of gifts from that source does not exceed $50 in a calendar year. So mostly the type of things I see, you know, maybe like flowers, a gift basket, something at Christmas. But once again, just because you can receive it doesn't mean that you necessarily should. I think this is one of the things you have to be careful with appearances. Technically, let's say somebody was coming in front of the planning commission, they could bring all the planning commissioners a $50 gift card and hand it out before their hearing. Obviously, that's not something we would want, even though it's technically legal. Once again, maybe legal, but not ethical. Any questions here about gifts or anything we talked about?
I think-
offering me gifts.
I think it comes up when you're having lunch or something with someone and you're talking in a range of issues. Some of it might be county business, some of it might be. So that thing sometimes gets a little complicated.
Right.
People are taking you to lunch. I won't get taken.
No, I mean, enjoying your lunch. But they offer to pay for your lunch.
Oh,
And that actually happened to me just a couple of weeks ago. The president of the local bar association invited me out for lunch just to get to meet me and get to know me. He's also a local attorney and occasionally he has, you know, business with the county. So at the end of lunch, I just let him know that we'll just split the check, even though it's only $14, but you just don't want the appearance of somebody, you know, buying you off, right? It's just not
And
worth
don't get me wrong. I
Yeah.
understand.
it. No, that's good. All right, anything?
Just want somebody to buy me lunch.
The check.
Wait a second.
You don't get.
All right, any other questions about gifts? Move on, we're almost done here. We're gonna talk just a little bit about public meeting law. The Oregon form of government requires an informed public aware of the deliberations and decisions of governing bodies and the information upon which such decisions were made. Is the intent that decisions of governing bodies be arrived at openly? I apparently have a typo there, right? Openly, public meetings, I think it's supposed to stay there. A quorum of the government body may not meet in private for the purpose of deciding or deliberating towards a decision or any matter except as otherwise provided by ORA 192.610 to 192.690. So that's just kind of laying out the law. I think what's important is that it uses the word meeting, but it really should say deliberation because we think of meetings as being formal. Whenever I think of an illegal meeting, I think of something happening at midnight or, you know, something sneaky like that. But a lot of times, improper meetings kind of happen almost on accident. So, one thing to be very careful for is electronic meetings. And like I said, this is one of those ones I think that could happen on accident very easy. I know, I'm sure all the boards and the commission have heard, you know, do not reply all to emails that have all the board members on it. That's an easy thing to do. If you start to enter into a discussion about county business, it would be a violation of the public meetings law. Same thing with text messages or even on social media, Facebook. we're gonna have a fact find down here, but even like if you're on the newspaper, comment section, anything that you're basically communicating, you just have to be very careful. And this is another one, it's, serial discussions. This is where maybe not a quorum of you are meeting and talking, but you're talking one at a time. But you're kind of going around the group, getting everybody's opinion and sharing everybody's opinion. From time to time, I know Don or maybe the fair manager might come and ask your opinion on something. He might ask all the board members, and that's perfectly fine. But if he's facilitating a kind of a discussion de facto by sharing what other board members are thinking, then you run into problems with that serial discussion. Any questions with those ones so far? Oh, yeah.
Does this include nonprofits? Like, do nonprofits fall under these rules?
They wouldn't know because they're not a public body. So
Okay.
they may have other ethical things. I'm not really familiar with the laws that run the nonprofits, but yeah, they wouldn't be considered under these rules. And this is a tricky one, social gatherings. Technically, the board could get together, have like a barbecue or dinner. They just would have to be very clear that you can't talk about anything with county business. In practice, I think this is almost impossible if you guys are all together. It's county business is going to come up, so it is a possibility, but something I would caution against. I don't think I really made it clear. I think I skipped over my note, but we're talking about a quorum of the board. So the Board of Commissioners has 5 members. You guys can talk individually with each other. Same with the Fair Board. The Planning Commission's a bit bigger, so they can have a group of 3 people talking, which is fine. But once you have a voting quorum and you're talking about county business, that's when it's a problem. Sorry, I skipped over that note. Yeah, that's right. Sorry. So I think the boards and the commission's lucky. They have staff assistants that kind of take care of these things, but I just kind of want to go out the quick requirements for a public meeting. It must be noticed in advance, and there's no specific amount of notice given that's required. So it doesn't say it has to be 7 days, but it has to give enough notice that people can be aware. I think the minimum would be 24 hours for a special meeting. Obviously, we try to get things out as soon as we can. The only exception if it's a true emergency, and it's something that we'd have to declare and explain at the meeting why we couldn't give proper notice for the media and for the public. The notice requirement must include location, time, and the ability to attend remotely. Like I said, staff kind of takes care of that for you guys. If there's voting, it must be done in public. You can't vote in executive sessions or anything sneaky like that. Yeah.
Can you create a motion and then we can do a motion?
Probably not, because that would lead to a vote. So you can discuss it, and I think, as the board knows, the board can give direction, which is different than a decision, and it can have staff, but mostly the direction is preparing staff to bring the matter to a public meeting where it's going to be voted on. So you have to be very careful. So while you can't make a motion, I think you can make a recommendation, which sounds like a play on words, but. And then the last thing, it must be recorded. You can do video or voice recording, or normally we do minutes just to make it clear. So we have another fact pattern here, and I kind of gave away the answer, but story runs in the local paper online about an upcoming decision the Planning Commission will be voting on. A member of the Planning Commission makes a comment about the upcoming decision in the comments section. A second, third, and then 4th member join in on the conversation. Yeah, that's the fact of form, right? Yeah, exactly. So we just want to avoid that. And like I said, it could be on the news website, it could be on Facebook, it could be on Instagram, just anything where we're communicating. Oh, there's the answer. All right, so we got through that. I hope that wasn't too painful. Any final questions or comments or anything anybody wants to say? Oh,
Commissioner Bang.
We do have one commissioner missing from ethics training, and is there a methodology for, I guess, making sure that either she views or?
well, I know that,
Well, we've got both commissioners on.
Oh, we do? Oh, okay, cool. I only saw Commissioner Thompson.
She thought he had the other one.
Oh,
Okay,
okay,
thank you, Teresa.
cool, thank you.
all right, well, if there's no more questions, that's it.
Thank you
for
very
your
much,
time.
County Council. Appreciate the presentation and always good lessons that come out of this. So thank you. And thank you for attending.
What about, planning commission? I know I saw one member.
Yeah.
I think we had two members.
Do we have two members of the planning
members
commission
up there. What
attend?
about the rest of them?
So I did send out my slides to everybody. and-
Did you? Oh,
Mhm.
And
perfect.
of course, if, even has any question.
Awesome.
Right here.
I'm just all wanting to
So
check it
that's
out.
fine.
Well, thank you for
All
having
right,
me.
yeah, welcome Craig Johnson. We're gonna have an update on the Sunset Empire Transportation District. I'll turn it over to our Executive Director, Craig Johnson. So, thanks for
thank you
being
very
here.
Thank you for having me. This is a continuing effort by Sunset Empire to get out into the community. One, to introduce myself to the community, and two, to give you an update as to where Sunset Empire is. So to start off, my name is Craig Johnston. I'm the new executive director. I started in October. I have over 25 years of transit experience in Oregon and Washington State. I'm an Oregon Transit Association board member. I started my career as a part-time relief operator, paratransit specifically, and kind of worked my way up through organizations over the years to where I'm at now. And I still have my CDL, so you may occasionally see me out there driving about. Next slide.
There,
There we go. SETD has a 7-member board of commissioners. Debbie Booth Smith, our chair, is here tonight.
welcome Debbie.
And then we also have Tracy McDonald as our vice chair, Pamela Algeria is our secretary, Rebecca Reed, Charles Withers, Guillermo Romero, and Paul Lewicki on our board. Next slide. And some facts. Clatsop County Board of Commissioners voted to create the district with the help of a state transit grant, and that was back in 1993. We are a special district similar to fire and irrigation districts within the state of Oregon. The district relies on property taxes, timber taxes, state taxes, federal funding, and bus fares to provide services to the citizens of Clatsop County. Next slide. And we have a traditional chain of command at Sunset Empire. I am the executive director. We have a chief operating officer, a finance manager, a mobility manager, an executive assistant, and a human resources manager. Today, the district runs 4 fixed routes that we brought back online since our financial issues. And we run 3 to 5 paratransit buses for door-to-door services for seniors and people with disabilities. The district serves a population of 41,000. We averaged 500 riders before our financial problems, and we now average about 250 riders a day now. Next slide. And this is what our ridership looks like last year. You can see the first 4 months through April, we were averaging roughly about 13,000 passengers a month. With these financial problems and shutdown in late April, you can see the dramatic decrease in ridership for May. And then you can see we start steadily progressing up with our ridership starting in June, going all the way to December, and we saw a slight bump in January of this year. Next slide. So the big question is the financial crisis, what exactly happened? And this hopefully will answer some of those questions. SETD was delayed in receiving some federal funding. During the delayed disbursement of federal funds, SETD utilized state and local funds to meet payroll and continue serving the citizens of Clatsop County. The board of directors and ODOT were presented inaccurate financial information that reported the district still had over 800,000 in funds. The board of directors was not made aware of SET's precarious financial position until mid-April of 2023. Next slide. Eventually, the state and local funds that SETD was using to provide services to the citizens of Clatsop County ran out. And SETD ceased operations on 4/29. With the help of Governor Kotek, State Senator Weber, State Representative Javati, SETD was given a $1 million loan from the Oregon Transportation Infrastructure Bank to restart services the following week. The loan will be paid back on a quarterly basis through the year 2027. So that's kind of what happened, and this is our way forward, what we're doing to reestablish ourselves as being relevant to our community. And one of the first ways of doing that is we're doing better community networking with other community service providers and leaders. I've been to several city council meetings. I'm meeting with several human services agencies where I'll make this presentation and to get introduced so that we can work together to provide for the people in the county better. Transparency of SEPD's finances through improved reporting and fiscal oversight. Accurate, current, and complete disclosure of the district's financial standing. Board-approved policies that diversify the roles in our small organization. Budget oversight, travel restriction, and whistleblower protections are now in place. And we're also divesting in some of the powers of the executive director. One of the problems SCDD had was the executive director was also the budget officer and did all the direct reporting to the board. So we've now kind of put some checks and balances in place to divest some of that power. Required staff and board of commissioners training on district financial. The executive director, finance director, and 6 board members have attended ODOT Transit District Financial Management Training. We've also set aside a reserve fund to prevent any future disruptions in case we have any financial hiccups in the future. And finally, a fiscally responsible restoration of services. We're currently looking at restoring Route 15, probably within the next 2 months. And that's one of our big gaping holes of this project.
So how many routes do you have going now?
We have 4 fixed routes going.
You still, okay.
Do you
Commissioner.
have plans for your other board member to receive training? Are they going to receive the same training as the other 6?
It's an optional training.
It's an optional thing.
Yeah.
Okay, Commissioner Thompson.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Johnson, Director Johnson, you have given us, I think, a very reassuring report. I think that your board members were all interested in doing a good job. My concern as an interested community member was, I would say, the lack of ongoing auditing function. And I wonder if you have availed yourself of the Special Districts Association staff or I would say extra ODOT staff to come in just to do some reality checking and ground truthing and really make sure that the improvements that you've put in place are nurtured and implemented by having outside objective folk come in and help you do your job. Is that acceptable or reasonable to ask?
Oh, yes. And our reporting is quite extensive. I mean, every 2 weeks, ODOT is getting an in-depth financial report from us on what our bank statements are, where we have accounts receivable, accounts payable. Everything we do is being watched very closely, and we're okay with that. Given where the problems were, we have no problems with that. We want to be as transparent as we possibly can. We've updated a lot of our reporting to the board also. We now have a cash flow where we're projecting out for a whole year where our cash flow is going to be, which gives the board a better idea of how we're doing long term. Also, as another check and balance that we're going to institute, we're also going to have a bank statement actually sent to the board treasurer so that we get one and the board treasurer does separately so that there can't be any issues with that. So we're instituting several checks and balances to hopefully prevent anything from like this happening again.
That's very responsive. Thank you.
Commissioner Webb.
Thank you. I think you answered my questions. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thanks, Commissioner Webb. Commissioner Banks.
This is just a question. I haven't stayed up to date on what is happening over there at the transportation district. Are you an interim or are you permanent?
Permanent.
Permanent. Excellent.
Well, we all know how valuable the service is. We all found out how valuable on April 29th. And certainly appreciate the steps forward and what you presented. I'm still trying to figure out, so you have the 4 fixed route
Mhm.
and you have your ridership down considerably. Is it because you're not running as many?
We're not running as many hours as we
Okay.
were, so there's some compression hours wise.
Gotcha.
That's the main reason for that. And also Route 15, which is the Warrenton route, hasn't been reestablished yet.
Okay, but you're saying that's gonna be reestablished and.
Yeah.
So along with your fiscal projections, do you have I know it's hard to make projections in a public meeting, but do you have kind of a guesstimate of when you're going to be back to your,
Full strength?
yes?
That's gonna be a while.
Okay.
That's gonna be a while. I've been asked that before. I'm thinking a year and a half, 2 years at the earliest.
Okay.
It's gonna take a while.
What do you see as the next step, I guess, to expanding from the 4 routes? What's the next direction you feel like you guys are gonna?
Obviously, getting Route 15 back online. So,
Warren.
yeah, that's huge. And then from there, we'll look at maybe expanding the hours on some of the routes. Route 10 in Astoria is a, heavily used route, but the hours are kind of compressed right now. So if we can extend those out, that would probably be a logical.
What are your hours currently?
It starts at like 9, that particular route. It goes till about 5:30.
Yeah, it would be nice to have it as
Yeah.
a full work day.
Yeah,
or something.
exactly.
Excellent, thank you.
Not to dredge up a bunch of bad memories, but the federal funding that didn't come through,
Mhm.
and it did eventually, I'm assuming. And so how is that gonna be in the future? How are we gonna be able to prevent against that? And what was, I guess, this was completely on the federal government for not reimbursing, or
Well, there was a delay. There was a delay.
Just a delay.
Yeah, and that was kind of a catalyst.
for everything?
Because there wasn't a lot of money left. So that wasn't the main reason the collapse. The collapse would have happened whether the money came in or not,
I said,
but it was the catalyst that kind of broke the camel's back.
gotcha.
We just received our first reimbursement of federal funds since last summer, about 3 weeks ago. So just getting our federal funds reestablished, because when we had the financial collapse, there was federal funds that were not being utilized properly. So the federal government said, hey, you
They
need to
ceased
get
it, and then you had to go back and.
correct. We had to go through and totally revamp all our financial policies, all our reporting. It's been quite a big task over the last 3 or 4 months, but we got everything in line. So
Commissioner Banks?
Is it characteristic to have your federal funding be delayed like that? Or is
Not
it
typically.
just because of the situation and then having to,
not typically, not typically.
I just wonder what caused that? Right.
And I know Debbie, did you have anything you'd like to add?
I think Chris is doing a good job. We're all working really hard. The whole board is very dedicated, to making sure that we get back to where we were. We're not just walking down the street and have somebody else. We made the problem.
Well, thank you, Debbie. Appreciate you being here. Any other questions, comments? Okay.
I appreciate the transparency. When this happened, I went back like a couple months worth of meetings that the board had gone through, and I didn't see any mention of budgetary issues or any mention of any concerns. And so I was really kind of taken aback, I think, along with the rest of the community, on how can you go from being fine to not fine in such a short period?
Almost like overnight.
Yeah, basically almost like overnight. Like, how do you per se lose $800,000?
Very- And I can't get into specifics.
No,
Right.
and I recognize that. And so, it was, but the board, there was just not a murmur of concern. I was reading, they were planning, events and stuff, and you don't plan events if you don't have money. And so it just really showed to me that it was,
Everything was hunky dory.
so kind of fascinating to me.
Yeah.
So I appreciate the transparency. I
Yeah.
appreciate the bank statements. I appreciate everything that you're doing in order to make sure, everything the board's doing in order to make sure our community doesn't suffer.
And that's what the ultimate goal is. You know, I've emphasized this to everybody since I've come on board. We're not setting these policies for me or who our finance officer is. We're setting the policies for the position.
Yeah.
So that once we're not in these positions, it can't happen. Because it's not good.
No, and I echo Mr. Bank's sentiment exactly. The communication is so important, and it had, you know, people known in advance. I think there would have been a real community effort to try to
Oh, yeah.
assist in any way possible. So, yes. Appreciate it. Okay, thank you.
Well, thank you.
Thank
for
you for
having me.
being here.
Thanks.
Do we have any other items on our work session? I'm not seeing anything. We'll go ahead and take a 9-minute break and reconvene in regular meeting. So, thanks.
So everybody who's present.
They have to show.
Brady
their-
member.
It's up to them.
Oh, okay, that's what limits that.
Yeah.
Okay. It was just, it's hard when you can't see the rest of the Brady Bunch.
Didn't hear it good.
All right. Good? Yep. Okay. The Board of Commissioners, as the governing body of Clatsop County, all county service districts for which this body so acts, and as the Clatsop County Local Contract Review Board, is now meeting in regular session. All rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. I want to welcome everybody here this evening. Clerk of the Board, can we have the roll call?
Chair Quayla,
Here.
Vice Chair Bang. Here. Commissioner Toyoka,
Here.
Commissioner Webb,
Here.
Commissioner Thompson.
I'm here.
Okay, thank you, Clerk of the Board. We had an opportunity to review the agenda during our work session. Do we have any questions, comments? Are we ready for approval?
I move to approve.
Moved and second to approve the agenda. All those in favor signify with an aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Okay, motion carries. First item is a proclamation for International Women's Day. It's on page 17, and Patty Jo Angelini, our Public Affairs Officer, I'll turn it over to you.
Good evening, Chair Quila and Commissioners. For the record, my name is Patty Jo Angelini, and I'm Public Affairs Officer for Clatsop County. International Women's Day is celebrated on March 8th and has been observed since the early 1900s in the U.S. and in Europe. Today, it is celebrated globally. March 8th is significant in that it was when female garment workers marched in protest against their hazardous working conditions. Throughout history, women have played critical economic, cultural, and social roles in every aspect of life in our nation and our community. International Women's Day is a time to recognize the extraordinary acts of women and to stand together as a united force to advance gender equality.
Thank you very much, Patty Jo. Do we have any questions, comments? Are we ready for a motion?
I move to approve resolution and order proclaiming March 8th, 2024 to be International Women's Day and authorize the chair to read and then sign the proclamation.
Commissioner Thompson seconds.
Moved and seconded, approve the resolution and order proclaiming March 8th, 2024 to be International Women's Day and authorize the chair to read, then sign the proclamation. All those in favor signify with an aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Okay, motion carries. In the matter of proclaiming March 8th, 2024 International Women's Day. Whereas on March 8th, 1857 in New York City, female textile workers marched in protest of unfair working conditions and unequal rights for women in one of the first organized strikes by working women, during which they called for a shorter workday and decent wages. And whereas on March 8th, in 1908, women workers in the needle trades marched through New York City's Lower East Side to protest child labor, sweatshop working conditions, and demand women's suffrage. And whereas the first International Women's Day was held in March 1911, a day of celebration that belongs to all those committed to women's equality. And whereas, according to the U.S. Bureau of Labor Statistics, for every dollar earned by men, women earn just over 85 cents. And according to the U.S. Census Bureau, as women age, their likelihood of living in poverty increases. And whereas International Women's Day inspires others to understand and value women's inclusion as we forge a better world. And whereas when women themselves are inspired to be included, there's a sense of belonging, relevance, and empowerment. And now, therefore, be it hereby resolved that the Board of County Commissioners of Clatsop County does hereby proclaim March 8, 2024 as International Women's Day in Clatsop County and encourages all community members to join in this observance and celebration, honoring the contributions of many roles of women throughout our nation and standing with them in as they call for equality. Dated this 28th day of February, 2024. Board of Clatsop County Commissioners for Clatsop County. Thank you very much, PJ. Next is business from the public. This is an opportunity for anyone to give a 2-minute presentation about any item on the agenda except for public hearings or any topic of county concern that is not on the agenda. Clerk of the board, are there any members of the public signed up to speak remotely?
Yes, there is.
Okay. If you've signed up to testify, please wait until you're called on, then give your name and address for the record. You'll have 2 minutes to speak.
Nancy Chase.
Okay, Ms. Chase?
Sorry, I have to unmute her.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Great, thank you. Nancy Chase, 79089 Tide Avenue in Cove Beach, also known as Falcon Cove. And I am talking today about a watershed management conservation plan that was submitted to your planning department by the Falcon Cove Beach Water District. And I guess over the past years, I felt a little helpless because the county has not, nor any other governmental agency, seem to have much ability to have oversight on water districts. But in this case, the Water Resources Department requires that this plan be reviewed by both Clatsop and Tillamook County. And this plan is in reference to the new well, which helped end the moratorium in Cove Beach a number of years ago. And it's a conservation plan for how that well is to be used. And when the well was, when the grants were given to construct the well, and when the license was given for the well, there was nothing there saying it was an emergency use only. But recently, the Water District has been stating it's for emergency use only. And rather than the 220 units that are ultimately going to be built in Cove Beach, it's limiting water hookups to 125. And so I would just like to ask the county manager and the planning director, since you have the opportunity to review that, to make sure that there's nothing in that document that would limit the growth for any unreasonable cause that's allowed for it by the county. And I like to say, you know, I am a property owner. I have 3 building lots, all with septic approvals, all meeting land use requirements. I don't want to have to sell one and find out they can't get a water hookup or not get a building permit. This is really needed housing, and I really need, I'm here to really to protect my property rights for this land. So just asking for a good review of this document, and I've not been able to see it yet myself. Thank you for your time.
Thank you very much, Ms. Chase.
That's all the public comment.
Do we have anyone that signed up to speak in person?
No, we do not.
Okay, we'll go ahead and close the business from the public at this time. We've got a consent calendar in front of us. We've had an opportunity to review it. Anyone have any questions or comments? We have a motion.
I move to approve.
Moved and seconded to approve the consent calendar as presented. All those in favor signify with an aye.
Aye.
All those opposed?
Wasn't a good.
Oh,
Yeah, I was a little
Well,
confused.
gee.
Yes, we didn't have any consent items.
does anybody want to approve the phantom consent calendar?
I think it's great.
It's in my script, so I'll just keep going. Okay, we'll go right on to commissioner reports. Start with Commissioner Banks.
So this last week, I went to the FTLAC meeting in Salem on Friday. We will be hearing, or it's projected that we will be hearing of the State Forester Cal Mokomoto's recommendation that he will be sharing with the Board of Forestry. It sounds like this Friday. And then, other than that, a few concerns, the same concerns have been spoken about, both at that meeting and then, you know, prior by our community. And no new information, nothing new to share. It was a frustrating meeting for me, mainly just because it was a historical look over the last 3 years on how we got here. And frustrating, mainly just because I was present for the last 3 years and I know how we got here. So it yeah, it's disappointing. I'm hopeful for, the state forester's recommendation that, you know, if anything, we will just know at that point what next steps we need to take. Moving into the childcare, forum, we've closed the application process, and we're awaiting for scheduling of interviews. Again, hopeful. And then, we have a regional, childcare meeting here scheduled for the 5th of March. And I enjoy participating with those because they're a larger forum and more people participate. And you hear more information from on-the-ground employees. And I think the best decisions made happen when you're listening to those that are actually working and on the ground. Interesting fact, somebody shared an article with me regarding retirement funding for child care providers in our community and in the state of Oregon. That was actually a legislative concept that I worked with Senator Weber on presenting last year. Granted, it's not the legislative concept that was presented because it got dusted out in that session, but it came back around, but with the union. And so I just love when ideas come full circle. People don't forget them. They push them forward in other manners. And hey, getting retirement for our child care providers, I think that's amazing. Because that's something that we don't get when we're in that field. And so that was kind of a celebratory moment for child care providers across the state. And then just, I haven't had any other of my meetings. I think I have a Northwest Senior and Disability Service meeting coming up, but nothing else to report.
Well, thank you, Commissioner Banks. And I remember quite vividly you raising the child care retirement issue with first Senator Armitage and then Senator Webbage. So congratulations. It
was actually Rachel Armitage that sent me the email.
Was it?
Yeah,
Okay.
It was very sweet. She goes, I remember, and it was wonderful.
And can you brag about your daughter real quick?
I can. She is Miss Clatsop County's teen. So she won the teen,
Yeah.
whatever it's called.
Is it Miss Outstanding Teen? Or is it?
No,
No.
it's Miss Clatsop County's Outstanding Teen is the official title. And so her and a young lady, Lily Booth, won Miss Clatsop County, and she is from Clatskanie. And yes, we share the program with Tillamook and Columbia County. And then Miss North Coast is a young lady, I think she goes to Seaside High School. She's on the cheerleading team. So it was very exciting. It was a lot of fun. And those girls, man, those women, young women and girls, they are so brave. They get up there on stage and they speak their hearts. And that is hard to do when you are 13, 14, 15 years old. And it's hard to do when you're my age. So I'm just continually impressed with that program.
Yeah.
So,
Well, that is terrific news, and congratulations, Shailene. Congratulations to you and to all of the winners there.
I'm proud,
A lot of
Mama.
hard work, so that's awesome.
Yes, thank you.
Commissioner Toyoka.
Thank you. Good evening, everyone. In line with Commissioner Quayla's phantom consent calendar, I had a phantom CEDAR meeting on my schedule yesterday at 3:30, which I attended dutifully, but it was a meeting of one. It was a phantom and there was not a meeting. But just to let you know, I see that Executive Director, I was there. Very fortunate, humbly we've been accepted, our local business accepted to host a monthly Veterans Breakfast by the VSO. Mr. Wiley's put that together, and it's gonna be wonderful that we can celebrate the contributions of veterans in our area, and we don't have a start date yet, but it'd be nice that we can provide a breakfast and fellowship of the veterans there, and anyone else really who wants to come and celebrate those veterans, and some more information to follow. But one interesting thing came out of these discussions as we were trying to develop this, that you know, we have so many, history months, awareness month, proclamations. Memorial is, you know, we have a Memorial Day, Sunday. And as we were discussing that, it's like, why don't these celebrated veterans who have basically given their last full measure of devotion for this country, aren't we aware of them more than just one day a year when most people think it's a barbecue day? So we started discussing that, and, you know, just the next generation, I guess, would be nice if we thought of Memorial Day in a greater context. And not just the veteran, but the ones who made that sacrifice. And we all went back to our Declaration of Independence, and there's a key phrase in there. But says, but when a long train of abuses and usurpations, pursuing invariably the same object, evinces a design to reduce them under absolute despotism, it is their right, it is their duty to throw off such government and to provide new guard for their future security. Basically, that says if you have the ability, you have the responsibility. These individuals that we celebrate on Memorial Day have given that last measure of devotion, and they have fulfilled that promise. And that's a message we want to really reinforce to the next generation, you know, to help carry that thought of this is not just, you know, everything is not just handed to us, it has been earned through years, through generations. And I think we should celebrate that and understand where our roots are so we can better move forward. So, you know, so I appreciated that meeting with the veterans, and again, it's humbling that they really bring you back to this country and why we are here today, why we take our time to do this. It's not about self, it's about community, it's about country. So for that re-awareness, I thank all these gentlemen and women that came to that meeting and, you know, re-celebrated that fact to all of us.
Yeah, thank you, Commissioner Toyoka. Great words, and appreciate your service. Was this associated with the Band of Brothers at all, this breakfast?
No, no.
Okay.
It's not with the Band of Brothers, it's just a local veterans group that did it.
Okay.
The previous VSO had a weekly breakfast. It stopped with him, his departure. And so we saw an opportunity to help continue that with our new VSO. There was no location, so we said, can we offer location? Another fun thing there was we have had so many different individuals and businesses who we're going to do this are already saying, can we donate breakfast? Can we provide this? Can we do this for the veterans? So that we have a great community.
Yeah.
Just keep celebrating that.
Absolutely. And I think this timing is good because I've had people reach out and ask about something similar. So that's fantastic. And
more to follow by our BSO, Mr. Wiley.
Wonderful. And the LUM space is perfect for type of gatherings. I know they had a health fair last weekend, so it's nice to have that community space available for events. So thank you. Commissioner Thompson.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Well, isn't that just an inspiring sharing, a couple of them? That's wonderful. I'm here on this side of the mountains because I'm scheduled to testify in person tomorrow night at the state legislature, and I don't want to travel through that snow, actually. But in the meantime, I'm looking over my calendar. I think I've told you that AOC District 7, when I was the chair, I started the idea of having just a commissioner from each one of the 4 counties in District 7 of AOC get together and just kind of let our hair down. And it's like show business. If you're in the business, there's a kind of understanding about the challenges and the joys, and it gives us a chance to share what's going on in each of the 4 counties, Columbia, Clatsop, Tillamook, and Lincoln counties. So we talked about things. We talked about short-term rentals and how things are going and how things are enforced, and that kind of camaraderie and cooperation is always helpful. The AOC membership committee met, and we talked about sponsorship. If there are companies within Clatsop County who want to join AOC as sponsors, that's another way to support healthy communities. It also supports Clatsop County's reputation and standing all over the state. If you have knowledge of that, feel free to talk to me, feel free to talk to Kristen Paul, because that's another way to add value going forward, add visibility going forward, is to become a supporting member of the Association of Oregon Counties. The Local Government Advisory Committee met on the 23rd, and we had a chance to get acquainted with the new director of the Oregon Health Authority, Dr. Hathi, and she joined us. She listened to our introductions of ourselves. There's a great wealth of experience in that room and online. You'll remember that this LGAC exists to I would say to redesign the relationship of the counties with the state so that the county's voice is heard more clearly and accurately, and that the state agencies coordinate with the counties in a way that works better for us. The directors of the Department of Human Services and the Oregon Health Authority attend every meeting, and oftentimes Oregon Housing and Community Services and the Office of Emergency Management also participate in those meetings. So we've got folks from all over the state, public, private, healthcare, a lot of different kinds of folks coming together in that meeting. That's another useful place to have Clatsop County's needs met. We have tomorrow a hearing. I've already testified so that we can get money to study Highway 30 immediately, so that during the 2025 session, we can ask ODOT on behalf of ODOT to get construction dollars to actually do highway repairs. Tomorrow, there's a hearing on a bill that could bankrupt counties if we don't stop it, because it shifts the liability for design flaws from the architects and those kinds of professionals onto the county. So we don't want to see that happen. And that's what I'm up to right now. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Commissioner Thompson. We appreciate all you're doing. Commissioner Webb?
She's no longer on the meeting.
I know Commissioner Webb was not feeling well, so I appreciate her being able to join for a brief bit, and hopefully she'll be feeling better. I don't think I'll ever live down the phantom consent calendar, but I'll try my best. I do want to appreciate all of the hard work that went into those congressionally directed spending. I guess they're called community initiated projects now, but these are congressional asks. We had 5 of them that we submitted. It was a lot of work that went into those, and I really appreciate all of both the county manager and all the staff that put those requests together. We hope we can at least win on one of them. That would be fantastic. County manager.
Chair Quillen, members of the board, just on that, I just want to recognize Amanda Rappenchuk for all of her work, pulling those together. And as Chair Quillen mentioned, I mean, hopefully we'll get a little traction with at least one, hopefully more.
Hopefully more than one.
But they're really significant projects that I think would help us make the kind of progress that I think we're all working so hard for. Another thing I'll just mention real quick is that we are updating what our accomplishments have been during 2023 related to the work plan, which is the adjunct to the strategic plan. And I'll be sharing that with your board in the next few days. But I would encourage you to spend a little time with it. I think it tells a story about us really developing some of that infrastructure within the organization, with governance structures with the board, with our lobbying efforts, which are much more concentrated, emphasized than they have been in the past, and the collaboration that's making things happen. The one thing that I know is, after doing this for so long, is that nothing really happens without collaboration and partnership between the private sector, the public sector, and the nonprofit sector. And we have amazing work on really tough issues right now, whether it be housing, homelessness, environmental, infrastructure, and we're actually making progress on all of those areas. Childcare is another great example. And so I think, as I've mentioned before, at times we have to pause for a second and just think about where we are and the progress that we've made. And I do want to recognize county staff that do an amazing job for this community every day. Committed, capable, dedicated, and I just want to thank them too. So, thank you, Chair.
Yeah, thank you, County Manager, and completely agree with that. We'll move on to the business agenda. We have the first item is an appointment to Northwest Oregon Area Commission on Transportation, Northwest Act, and Columbia Pacific Economic Development District, COLPAC on page 20, and County Manager, turn it over to you.
Thank you, Chair Quillen, members of the board. This is a dual appointment for Northwest Act and COLPAC. As you probably know, both represent Columbia, Clatsop, Tillamook, and Western Washington County. The Northwest Act bylaws require the appointment of 2 citizen reps to their 28-member voting board. And for COLPAC, their bylaws require 4 private directors from each of the 4 counties onto their 24-member voting board. So on behalf of COLPAC and Northwest Act, the requested action is to approve an appointment of John Nygaard to the Northwest Oregon Area Commission on Transportation and Columbia Pacific Economic Development District with the term ending February 28th, 2026.
Thank you, County Manager. I'm assuming this is John Nygaard Jr., and he is more than capable in wearing many hats. He's a fantastic businessman and an attorney, and I think will be a really good advocate for this area and a good representative. So I think this is a great appointment.
Wanted to say the same thing.
Okay.
So, excellent.
Well, I stole it.
Commissioner Thompson has her hand up.
Commissioner Thompson.
I'd like to make a motion because I'm the COLPAC delegate from the board and the Northwest Act. Is that agreeable, Mr. Chair?
Absolutely.
So let me make that motion to approve the appointment of John Nygaard to Northwest Oregon Area Commission on Transportation, the Northwest Act, and Columbia Pacific Economic Development District, COLPAC, with the term ending February 28th, 2026.
Moved and seconded to approve the appointment of John Nygaard to the Northwest Oregon Area Commission on Transportation, Northwest Act, and Columbia Pacific Economic Development District, COLPAC, EED, with a term ending February 28th, 2026. All those in favor signify with an aye.
Aye.
Aye. All those opposed? Okay, motion carries. We'll move on to the next item, which is appointments to Recreational Lands Planning and Advisory Committee, and our Natural Resources Manager, Steve Meschke. Welcome,
Thank you.
Steve.
Hey, thank you, Chair Cuella, Commissioners. This evening, I'm here for the presentation of Recreation Land Planning Advisory Committee. We have 3 vacancies on the committee, and these 3 vacancies are due to just expiring terms. No one left the committee. Those 3 members' terms that expired, they're asking to be reappointed. And then we did also receive 2 other applicants, Lisa High and Clara South. I think, yeah. So we have those to choose from. And the 3 members that are asking to be reappointed, they've been very valuable members for us. They got a wide array of, from forestry to fisheries and everything, and horseback riding. So they're good members to retain. And I'll leave it up to you to decide.
Okay, thank you very much, Steve. Do we have any questions? Okay, Commissioner Thompson.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Steve, I'm assuming that if the board appoints or reappoints those members who wish to return and remain on the board, there's nothing to preclude the other applicants from attending those meetings and participating very fully and gaining valuable experience?
Oh, yeah. The meetings are always open, and we always welcome people to come and listen in and give input to us.
Good, I'd encourage that.
Right.
Thank you.
Great, yeah, good point. Thank you, Commissioner Thompson. Do we have a motion?
I move that the board appoint Steve Ferguson to fill District 1 countywide position, Tom Sayre to fill District 2 countywide position, and Lynn Leland to fill District 4 countywide position.
Moved and seconded that the board appoint Steve Ferguson to fill the District 1 countywide position, Tom Sayer to fill the District 2 countywide position, and Lynn Leland to fill the District 4 countywide position. All those in favor signify with an aye.
Aye.
Aye. All those opposed? Okay, motion carries.
All right, thank you.
All right, thank you, Steve.
Uh-huh.
Thank you.
Next is the public hearing on the Strategic Investment Program Agreement, Georgia Pacific Wanna Mill. It's on page 47 of our agenda. And this is the time that has been set for the public hearing. May we have the staff report?
Chair Quayla, members of the board, I have a quick presentation that we're going to pull up. I just want to start with a little background on what the SIP program is. The SIP program was actually enacted back in 1993, and it was really created to address the challenge of having Intel be such a capital-intensive enterprise over in Washington County, and providing an alternate tax structure that would allow them to make major capital investment that would be amortized over a very short period of time, and the full taxation of those investments would put them into a competitive disadvantage. And as we all know, when that happens, companies go someplace where they can be in a competitive advantage. And so, in 1993, SIP was born, and in 2003, it was amended to also address rural areas. And again, these are to address large capital investments. The way that the rural SIP works right now is that it's a special assessment where the first 40 million of the investment is taxed. And then the property value greater than that taxable base is then exempt over a 15-year period. That 40 million, though, is also indexed, so it increases 3% per year. So as another requirement, all right, as another requirement with the SIP is there is something called a community service fee. And so 25% of the tax savings is set aside and will then come back to the taxing jurisdictions. So that is a statutory requirement. You can also negotiate additional elements. And so Clatsop County, in the case of this SIP, negotiated a community impact fee also. If within a port district, it has to be approved by the Port Commission, and that was approved by the Commission on February 20th. There's no statutory requirement for employment, but they do have to work with the state employment department and to have job fairs and meet the other requirements of a first source hiring agreement with the state. After consideration by your board, this application then goes to the Oregon Business Development Commission, who has final approval on the eligibility of the application. So just as a little history, this is the second SIP that has come from Georgia Pacific. The first one was 2008, 2009 through 2022-23. At that time, the rural SIP was only the taxed portion was only 25 million. They still had the community service fee, but it was capped at 5 million, at $500,000. And so that first SIP was for improvements to the land, buildings, and structure, and then machinery. And then, next slide, please. With this SIP, it's about the first SIP was about $192 million. This one is estimated at 152. The first 40 million is taxed, so it went up from 25 million to 40 million. And the community service fee remains at 25%, but it's capped now at $3 million. And then the county did negotiate a community impact fee, and we've dedicated that to first responders, to the mill. So 2% out of that 5% would go to the Clatskanie Fire department, 1% would go to the Westport Fire Department, and then 2% would go to the rural law enforcement. Class Gunai Fire provides ambulance response to the mill too, so, and they weren't part of the first SIP, so we wanted to make sure that they were part of this. Obviously, Westport's right there too, fire district, they're a mutual aid responder. We wanted to make sure that they were also included. And again, it's for similar things. It's to replace paper machine number 1, which I think was built in the 60s. And so it'll be a similar type of improvement, which is to land or buildings, and then machinery, equipment, and fixtures for the most part. So when you look at the potential investment of $152 million and the taxable amount with the SIP, which is $40 million, the property tax rate of just over $10. If they didn't have a SIP, it would be about a $1.6 million property tax bill. The property tax with SIP, because you're only taxing that $40 million, is about $416,000. The community service fee, which is the 25% of the tax savings, is estimated the first year to be $291,000, and then the community impact fee, an additional $58,000. So the total annual payments off of this investment would be about $765,000. Kind of the context I have, since I was involved with those original Intel SIPs too, is that oftentimes these are the difference makers on whether the investment's made. I mean, I think that, you know, there are certain times where you wish things were different. The way that it works in the private sector is that it's very competitive on where these investments are made within companies across state lines. And so I think for Clatsop County, being competitive right now, given all the other challenges, economic challenges, it's important for us to be supportive of job retention. And these are family wage jobs, and we all know how important those are to a community. So when you look at it for the first year, you know, it's about 50% of what their taxable amount would be without a SIP. I think, again, I just want to reiterate, oftentimes these investments aren't made without some accommodation for the capital investment. So we have negotiated this. You know, I think it does benefit some of the government entities that are supporting the mill from a first response perspective. It is going to generate additional tax dollars for the taxing jurisdictions, and there will be a 15-year community service fee. So I'm happy to answer any questions. I want to thank Melanie Olson from Business Oregon, Kevin Leahy from Cedar, working with Georgia Pacific. And I will say Georgia Pacific representatives are also here, and they'd like to say a few words too. But it's been a great process, and happy to answer any of your board's questions.
Okay, thank you, County Manager. Commissioner Banks?
You said a 15-year community service. SIP is for 15 years also?
Yes,
Okay.
it's a 15-year SIP.
Excellent, thank you.
Any other questions of County Manager? Commissioner Toga?
You know, and I appreciate the efforts, and I think this is wonderful because it's actually, we have a lot of other issues coming down the road that will impact us, and having an economic commitment from the mill to this community is huge. I think it's with the impending HCP, even if best case scenario they go to, you know, it goes in the favor of our community, because it's still a huge impact. Those mills could still leave. So having this commitment from the mill, having the commitment to, you know, preserve this mill is huge. What I want to know is, like, have we figured out that economic impact? It's got to be momentous, because not only the jobs, but the peripheral work that's done, everything that the mill brings to this community, it's got to be a huge economic impact. Some people might say, you know, why are we giving up taxes? Why are we doing that? But I think if we don't, and the impact is even greater if we lose the mill.
Well, and I think,
That would be nice information.
yeah, I would say, Commissioner, that Jeremy and, I don't know, Christie might want to, answer some of that question about impact, so.
Good evening, and county commissioners and staff. I really appreciate you having us this evening. I'm Jeremy Ness. I'm responsible for the 3 Georgia Pacific facilities in the Northwest. WANA is the big one. A little bit of my background. So I started at WANA 25 years ago. The facility has allowed me to raise a family, provided a tremendous amount of stability and opportunity for personal, professional growth. So a lot of ownership in the mill, and my main goal is to make sure we keep it competitive to provide opportunities for future generations. So this investment opportunity we're pursuing, it's a $152 million project to rebuild a paper machine. So for context, this is a 1965 vintage asset that we would invest in, and we would make it state-of-the-art. And it allows us to use more cost-efficient raw materials and gives us flexibility to make a much wider range of product attributes so we can better serve our customers and make different products. So state-of-the-art. Most importantly, it creates an environment that's safer and more fulfilling for our employees. So this is a really big deal for us. So I just wanted to come and say thank you for all the support and also for considering the SIP agreement.
Commissioner Banks?
I just want to say thank you for investing in our community. My father-in-law worked there for 30 years before retirement, and then I have a number of previous high school students currently working there. And the investment in community is, it makes a big difference where I live out in Napa. Having kids that, you know, they don't want to go to college. That's not for them, but they have other opportunity to create a family wage job elsewhere. And so I appreciate the forward thinking of over the next 15 years. And also I appreciate the fact that you're upgrading that machine, because that just means that you're willing to stay here for longer. So thank you.
Okay, thank you, Commissioner Banks. Commissioner Thompson?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I would like to ask a question about, well, first I'd like to say something. You said it's a competitive environment, sir. And before I toured the WANA Mill, I didn't understand that this plant is competitive not only with other companies, but also with other plants within the Georgia Pacific family of companies. So you really, there's no easy pickings here. You have to be competitive all the way around, number one. But number two, my understanding was that you used environmentally sustainable wood products to make your paper, and you were committed to being, I would say, environmentally responsible as you produce the paper goods. Is that still true?
Yeah, that's correct. We use a lot of sawdust, so byproducts from sawmills that would otherwise be burned. Instead, we're able to process that and make that into a product for consumers. So yeah, we're able to put byproducts to higher value uses in our process, and that's still very true.
Great, thank you very much. Thank you, Jeremy. We've got a public hearing, so we'll go ahead and open the public hearing at this time. Does any commissioner have a conflict of interest to report? Clerk of the board, are there any members of the public signed up to speak remotely?
No, there are not.
Okay. Are there any members of the public signed up to speak in person?
No, there are not.
Okay. Not seeing any public comment, we'll go ahead and close the public hearing at this time. And do we have any further questions, comments? Nope. We ready for a motion? Okay.
I move to adopt the resolution and order approving the SIP agreement between Georgia Pacific, Port of Astoria, and Clatsop County, and recommend the Oregon Economic Development Commission approve the Georgia Pacific application for WANA Mill for inclusion in the State Strategic Investment Program.
Second. Moved and seconded to adopt the resolution and order approving the SIP agreement between Georgia Pacific, Port of Astoria, and Clatsop County, and recommend the Oregon Economic Development Commission approve the Georgia Pacific application for Wanna Mill for inclusion in the State Strategic Investment Program. All those in favor signify with an aye.
Aye.
Aye. All those opposed? Okay, motion carries. Thank you very much for being here, Jeremy, and congratulations. This is an exciting project, and we're glad that we're able to enter into this agreement. So, thank you.
Thank you all.
Thank you.
Next item is to adopt the resolution and order approving this, oh wait, my bad. We've got the Red Bluff Road Resolution of Necessity. And Terry Hendricks, our Public Works Director, is here.
Good evening, Chair Aquila and Commissioners. Come before you tonight to present to you potential to sign a resolution of necessity, which will allow us to start working with property owners on Red Bluff Road to replace a culvert. In order to reconstruct the road, additional right-of-way easements and other property interests will be required. The project is expected to impact one property owner abutting the project on the westerly side of the road. The board has the authority to exercise the power of eminent domain under Oregon law, including but not limited to the County Charter, ORS Chapter 203, Chapter 35, to acquire the needed property interest by purchase or by condemnation proceedings. In accordance with the procedures set forth in ORS Chapter 35, a resolution of necessity is required before offers are made to acquire the property interest through the exercise of eminent domain. Project design team has collected and analyzed data sufficient to clarify the existing right-of-way and to advance the design of the project. The project has been planned and located in a manner in which most compatible with the greatest public good, but which causes the least private injury. The design has progressed through the Department of Transportation and Development's project development procedures, and the final legal descriptions required for acquisition of the needed property interests have been developed. The county shall negotiate in good faith in accordance with applicable laws, rules, and regulations in an attempt to reach agreement as to the amount of just compensation and any compensable damages owed to each affected property owner or other persons of interest. To fairly determine the amount of just compensation and any compensable damages, staff will utilize the expertise of authorized real estate appraisers and other such experts to make those appraisals and appraisal reviews for acquisitions. The resolution of necessity directs county staff, council, and authorized agents to proceed with good faith negotiations for the acquisition of the needed property interests and to utilize the expertise of authorized real estate appraisers and other such experts to assist in the acquisition process. The resolution further requires Public Works Director to notify the board if the exercise of the power of eminent domain becomes necessary. Only after this process is completed does it authorize the Office of County Counsel and authorize outside counsel to file condemnation proceedings.
Thank you very much.
Are there any
For the staff
questions?
report, yep. Do we have any questions for our Public Works Director? Okay, we'll go ahead and open the public hearing at this time. Does any commissioner have a conflict of interest to report?
No.
Not seeing any. Thank you, Kevin. Clerk of the board, are there any members of the public signed up to speak remotely?
No, there are not.
Are there any members of the public signed up to speak in person?
No, there are not.
Okay, not having any comment, we'll go ahead and close the public hearing, and there's a suggested motion.
I move that the chair sign a resolution of necessity to start acquisition of right-of-way and construction easement.
Moved and seconded for the chair to sign the resolution of necessity to start acquisition of right-of-way and construction easement. All those in favor signify with an aye.
Aye.
Aye. All those opposed? Okay, motion carries. Yep.
Thank you, Commissioner.
Thank you, Terry. Next item is the update on Public Clatsop County Code 1.04.060, Public Contracting Rules on page 73. And we'll go ahead and this is the time to set for the public hearing. May we have the first reading by title only, County Council?
This is ordinance number 24-13 in the matter of an ordinance amending Clatsop County Code Section 1.04.060, Local Contract Review Board Rules.
Thank you, County Council. And do we have a staff report?
We do,
County
Madam
Council.
Chair. So today's public hearing is about a update to the Clatsop County public contracting rules. We discussed this in our workshop several weeks ago, so I'll be relatively brief, but just for any members of the public, the current Clatsop County contracting rules were first drafted in 2005. They were codified in the county code in 2012. Since then, there's been very few changes. The last change came in 2016, which was very minor. This was a project that was started before I got here by the prior county council. And as I was looking through it, we kind of had two options. We could either amend the current rules or kind of start over with a fresh draft. We decided it'd be better to start over. Many of the things are still the same because they are, dictated by statute, but they do offer some more flexibility and modernizations were made. The biggest changes is the authority that's delegated to the county manager. The current amount, which is $30,000, was set back in 2005 and hasn't been changed since. We're proposing that be increased to $150,000. We picked that amount after, looking through similar counties that have a similar structure of government with the county manager and their amounts. With this new amount, it'll just allow the county to move through contracts a lot more efficiently and quickly, be a little more nimble. And of course, even with that increased amount, we still, the county manager, still has to follow the contracting rules.
Yep. Great. Thank you for the staff report, County Council. Any questions? Okay, if none, I'll go ahead and open the public hearing at this time. Does any commissioner have a conflict of interest to report?
No.
Being none, clerk of the board, are there any members of the public signed up to speak remotely?
No, there are not.
Are there any members of the public signed up to speak in person?
No, there are not.
Okay, not having any testimony, we'll go ahead and close the public hearing at this time. The suggested motion is to continue the matter to the March 13th, 2024 meeting.
I move to continue the matter to the March 13th, 2024 meeting.
Second.
Moved and seconded to continue the matter to the March 13th, 2024 meeting. All those in favor signify with an aye.
Aye.
Aye. All those opposed? Okay, motion carries. Thank you, County Council. We'll move on to the next item, which is the ordinance 24-05, non-conforming uses and structures on page 95. And David Cook, our Community Development Senior Planner. And we'll turn it over to you. Welcome,
Thank you,
David.
Chair Aquila and Commissioners. I'll keep this a little bit brief. Your board heard our proposed amendments to the non-conforming uses and structures that we've made 2 weeks ago at that public hearing. There were no public testimony and no real questions from commissioners at that time. Since that time, I have only made a couple typo fixes in the text, so nothing else to report. Thanks.
Okay, thank you very much, David. Since this is the continuation of the public hearing on ordinance 24-05, may we have the second reading by title only?
This is ordinance number 24-05 in the matter of an ordinance adopting amendments to the Clatsop County Land and Water Development and Use Code, Article 3, regarding non-conforming uses and structures.
Thank you, County Council. Do we have any questions? Okay, we'll go ahead and open the public hearing at this time. Are there any members of the public signed up to speak remotely?
No, there are not.
Okay, anyone signed up to speak in person?
No, there are not.
Okay, we don't have any testimony. We'll go ahead and close the public hearing at this time. We have a suggested motion to approve.
Move to approve ordinance 24-05.
Second.
Moved and seconded to approve ordinance 24-05. All those in favor signify with an aye. Aye. All those opposed? Okay, motion carries. Great. Thank you, David.
Thank you.
This is the next one. This is
Oh, it's the
zero
next
six.
one. Okay.
Yeah, so
Sorry.
next one is ordinance 24-06, Clatsop Plains Community Plan on page 106. This is the continuation of a public hearing on ordinance 24-06, Clatsop Plains Community Plan. And our Community Development Director, Gail Henriksen, is here. First, we'll have the second reading by title only, County Council.
This is ordinance number 24-06 in the matter of an ordinance adopting the Clatsop Plains Community Plan 2040.
Thank you, County Council. Do we have any additional information from staff?
We do not.
Okay. Clerk of the Board, are there any members of the public that have signed up to speak remotely?
No, there are not.
Are there any members of the public that have signed up to speak in person?
No, there are not.
Since there's no testimony, we'll go ahead and close the public hearing at this time, and we do have a suggested motion.
Move to approve ordinance 24-06.
Second.
Moved and seconded to approve ordinance number 24-06. All those in favor signify with an aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Okay, motion carries. Next is ordinance 24-07, Elsie Jewell Community Plan on page 112. This is the continuation of a public hearing on ordinance 24-07, Elsie Jewell Community Plan. County Council, can we have the second reading by title only?
This is ordinance number 24-07 in the matter of an ordinance adopting the LC Jewell Community Plan 2040.
Thank you, County Council. Community Development Director, do we have any additional information?
I do not.
Okay. Clerk of the Board, are there any members of the public signed up to speak remotely?
No, there are not.
Are there any members of the public signed up to speak in person?
No, there are not.
Okay. We'll go ahead and close the public hearing, and there's a suggested motion.
Commissioner Thompson has her hand up.
Oh, sorry, Commissioner Thompson. Commissioner Thompson.
Thank you. I'd like to make that motion to approve ordinance 24-07.
Second.
Moved and seconded to approve ordinance 24-07. All those in favor signify with an aye.
Aye.
Aye. All those opposed? Okay, motion carries. Move on to ordinance 24-08, Lewis and Clark, Olney Waluski Community Plan on page 117. This is the continuation of a public hearing on ordinance 24-08, Lewis and Clark, Olney Waluski Community Plan. May we have the second reading by title only, County Council?
This is ordinance number 24-08 in the matter of an ordinance adopting the Lewis and Clark Olney Waluski Community Plan 2040.
Thank you, County Council. Do we have any additional information from staff?
I do not.
Okay, Clerk of the Board, are there any members of the public signed up to speak remotely?
No, there are not.
Are there any members of the public signed up to speak in person?
No, there are not.
Okay, we'll go ahead and close the public hearing at this time, and we have a suggested motion.
To approve ordinance 24-08.
Second.
Moved and seconded to approve ordinance 24-08. All those in favor signify with an aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Okay, motion carries. Next is ordinance 24-09, Northeast Community Plan on page 124. This is the continuation of public hearing on ordinance 24-09, Northeast Community Plan. County Council, can we have the second reading by title only? Excuse me.
This is ordinance number 24-09 in the matter of an ordinance adopting the Northeast Community Plan 2040.
Thank you, County Council. Community Development Director, do we have any additional information?
No.
Clerk of the Board, are there any members of the public signed up to speak remotely?
No, there are not.
Are there any members of the public signed up to speak in person?
No, there are not.
Okay, we'll go ahead and close the public hearing on ordinance 24-09 and ready for a motion.
Move to approve ordinance 24-09.
Second.
Moved and seconded to approve ordinance 24-09. All those in favor signify with an aye.
Aye.
Aye. All those opposed? Okay, motion carries. Next is ordinance 24-10, Seaside Rural Community Plan on page 129. This is the continuation of a public hearing on ordinance 24-10, Seaside Rural Community Plan. County Council, may we have the second reading by title only?
This is ordinance number 24-10 in the matter of an ordinance adopting the Seaside Rural Community Plan 2040.
Thank you, County Council. Is there any additional information from staff?
There is not.
Okay, Clerk of the Board, are there any members of the public signed up to speak remotely?
No, there are not.
Are there any members of the public signed up to speak in person?
No, there are not.
Okay, we'll go ahead and close the public hearing on ordinance 24-10.
And Commissioner Thompson has her hand up.
Commissioner Thompson.
Mr. Chair, I'd like to move to approve ordinance 24-10.
Moved and seconded to approve ordinance 24-10. All those in favor signify with an aye.
Aye.
Aye. All those opposed? Okay, motion carries. Next is ordinance 24-11, Southwest Coastal Community Plan on page 135. This is the continuation of a public hearing on ordinance 24-11, Southwest Coastal Community Plan. County Council, may we have the second reading by title only?
This is ordinance number 24-11 in the matter of an ordinance adopting the Southwest Coastal Community Plan 2040.
Thank you, County Council. Community Development Director, do we have any additional information?
No, we do not.
Clerk of the Board, are there any members of the public signed up to speak remotely?
Yes, there is.
There is.
Nancy Chase.
Nancy Chase. Nancy?
Unmute her.
We're trying to unmute you there, Nancy.
Okay, there we go. Nancy Chase.
Okay, now we can hear you. Yep.
One more time. Nancy Chase, 79089 Tide Road in Cove Beach. And I'm asking that this hearing be on the Southwest Community Plan be continued for two reasons. Number one, under historic sites, there are two mentioned, but you are missing the wagon wheel ruts on the Hug Point area, which I think are very historic and need to have mentioned to be protected from who knows what, but definitely need to be recognized. Secondly, per my earlier conversation, the plan is showing the well, which is as an emergency backup. The Falcon Cove Water District is showing 125 hookups. These are controversial statements and are contradicted by their own documents when they receive public funding for the well. So I feel like staff kind of needs to work on the language of that. You may think I'm being unreasonable or paranoid, but on the short-term rental ordinance, for example, there was a clause saying that STRs were commercial. So last spring, the Water District declared all short-term rentals commercial, doubled the monthly water rate, and by 50% of the amount of water used, it puts us all short-term rentals in a different category when there's really no definition of short-term rentals as a commercial use. So I think anything put out by the county can be used by others for maybe not the best intentions. So I'm asking that those two facts be clarified or maybe couched in a different way by staff. Thank you.
Thank you, Nancy. Clerk of the Board, do we have any other members of the public signed up to speak remotely?
No, we do not.
Do we have any members of the public signed up to speak in person?
No, we do not.
Okay. Do we have any responses from staff?
No, I have no responses. Thank you.
What is the pleasure of the board here?
Commissioner.
Commissioner Thompson.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. You've heard, first of all, the staff, the board, the community members have all worked so hard, so long with such good intention. Still, we've resolved most issues. There are a few remaining. The amount of labor and it's almost compassion fatigue at this point. I understand the concerns of my community members on both sides of this issue. I am concerned because I've seen the water board do de facto land use planning by instituting a water moratorium. I'm concerned about the data. I'm also concerned about the appropriate use of county staff for a very small number of people. I can't vote for this. I'm not asking anyone else to agree with me, but I cannot vote for this because of my concerns about the data issues. So my plan is to abstain from this vote and ask my colleagues to do their best governing possible to accommodate in whatever way they see fit the concerns of the neighbors about water issues in Cove Beach. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Commissioner Thompson. Do we have any other comments? Commissioner Banks?
So I'm gonna find difficulty, voting on it this evening. I'm wondering if, there's an opportunity to table this and then allow me some time and discussion, with staff.
County Council, is there anything barring us from continuing the matter to March 13th?
No, there's not. You can
Okay.
continue it.
I move to continue the matter till March 13th.
I'll second that.
Moved and seconded to continue the matter, ordinance 24-11 to our March 13th, 2024 meeting. All those in favor signify with an aye. Aye. All those opposed? Okay, motion carries. Thank you very much, Community Development Director.
Thank you.
And we are done with the public hearings. We can move on to the good of the order. Does anybody have anything for the good of the order? Yeah. So we have a phantom good of the order.
Mr. Chair, could I just say, I really appreciate the work that it took to get all of this planning work done. Oh, for heaven's sakes, what a wonderful achievement on everybody's part. So much passionate devotion to community put into paper. So thanks to everyone. Thanks, Mr. Chair.
I completely agree, Commissioner Thompson. Thank you so much, Gail, and to your entire team for all your hard work on completing this monumental task to get to this point. So appreciate all the hard work. We'll go ahead and adjourn this evening. Thank you, everyone.